Hi, I'm Nigel Vaz, CEO of Publicis Sapient, and these are my biggest lessons. Technology is a superpower. As a child growing up, I had dyspraxia, so the inability to write and perform fine motor skills very effectively. And what that meant is it was a struggle to communicate ideas or thinking in written form. And then I discovered computers, and that changed everything for me. It also helped me reflect on the fact that I was surrounded as a child by comic books, and so many of the comic book heroes, whether it was a Batman or an Ironman, are regular people augmented by technology. And that augmentation transformed them into superheroes. And I believed that that lesson applied not only to me as a child, but today applies to every individual and organization in terms of what they create, in terms of what they produce. And so much of the work I do advising companies today involves how they leverage digital and technology to fundamentally transform themselves. From automotive companies, which used to be about cams and pistons, to today being about the software car. From healthcare, allowing surgeons to perform surgeries in another country while being somewhere else, to AI, which is dramatically transforming drug discovery and so much of how we create and share information. Learn, unlearn, and relearn. If you think about the industrial age and everything it taught us, it created this idea that you study for the first third of your life, you work for the next third of your life, and then you retire depending on how well you do the first two. And since then, we're starting to see shifts in business practices and technology. That means that what you've learned can't be applied over a long period of time because it needs you to learn new ways of doing things. And that's becoming ever shorter. When I was teaching my young son how to code, what started to become apparent to me is that most of the actual tools that he was using and the coding language I was teaching him was going to be irrelevant very soon. And effectively, maybe some of the fundamental principles would stay the same, but beyond that, he would need to learn new ways of doing things consistently. And when you think about the world today, we're seeing that happen across so many different spaces. So you can't hold on to focusing on what you know, but focusing on your ability to learn. Folks who learn on a continuous basis and learn to unlearn what they've learned and relearn new ways of doing things are going to be continually more successful. As an organization, we used to focus on bringing in folks to the organization, young people, on the basis of what they knew. And today, so much of the effort we apply is to what their ability to learn is going to be, because where it used to be that a college degree or the experience that you had in the early part of your life would be something that you continue to apply. Today, more and more of that is becoming all about the equivalent of learning that kind of technology or way of working over a 4-year period, 5 or 6 times over the course of your career. So you're effectively doing the learning of 4 or 5 college degrees over the course of your career. And that means learning, unlearning, and relearning is absolutely critical. The need for speed. Speed is an acronym that is essentially all about how organizations can accelerate their transformation. The S is for strategy, so being really clear on what the strategic value pools are that you are trying to unlock within your organization. The P is product, so moving away from this notion of a project or a program, but to something that is more like a product that is constantly evolving, where you have a version 1 and a version 2 and a version 3 of the entirety of the organization. The E is all about experience, the experience you create for consumers and the experience you create for your employees, because the combination of these experiences are what delight and keep consumers coming back to your product or service and keep employees happy and connected to an organization. The next E is engineering, and the idea of engineering is about shifting the role of technology from being about keeping risk low and keeping cost down to creating differentiation and acceleration by allowing you to shape the world around you. And finally, D, data and AI. We already see how much data and AI is transforming the world around us today, but many, many organizations and individuals still aren't able to rely on data in a real time on a real-time basis and use AI to automate decisions wherever possible. So think about how many times you've watched a streaming platform that's advertising to you the same show that you've already watched. And that's because the data is not being processed in real time and the AI is not enabling that decision to be made on what to put in front of you. And so many of these examples continue to persist. My belief is speed really can help accelerate the transformation of organizations. Defend, differentiate, and disrupt. The idea is here about how an organization makes strategic choices. So I talk about this framework we use called the D3 model. And the idea of this model is to facilitate in an organization clear decision-making around the ideas of when are you simply defending your position relative to your competition. And that warrants the kind of investment you make in it, the kind of talent and focus you apply to it. The second might be a different space in a different business unit or a different part of the company where you are continuing to differentiate and you want to stay differentiated relative to your competition. And finally, disrupt. And disrupt means you want to fundamentally disrupt the industry that you are in. And we've seen so many organizations do that very dramatically, but that requires you to make significant investments and significant shifts from how you operate today. The idea of this framework is that all of these choices can many times coexist in an organization at the same time, but it provides a strategic frame to allow the organization to communicate both internally and externally and direct resources into those choices very, very simply. The Cathedral and the Rock. The idea of the Cathedral and the Rocks is simply within an organization holding a frame for people to connect to about what the organization is trying to achieve. What's the vision of the organization? And then it's about picking the right sets of people that can bring that cathedral to life and making sure that that team is diverse and multidisciplinary and really can bring that vision to life on the ground. And finally, enabling a constant drumbeat of communication so that when people are going about their everyday job, which might feel like to them like breaking rocks, they connect the breaking of that rocks to the building of that cathedral because that allows them to approach what they do every day in a very different way than without that frame. So the idea of the Cathedral and the Rocks is really simple. It's having a clear, articulated vision that people can connect to, a diverse, multidisciplinary team that bring that vision to life on the ground, and finally, a constant drumbeat of communication that reminds new people in large and diverse organizations that are constantly joining the organization and the teams what it is that we're trying to do.